The runoff is set. Denver will be left with two candidates who aren't that different. The ballot confused some voters. About 92,000 didn't follow directions.
People get lost in the sauce on vote 2.
A different way to vote could make matters even more confusing. The EPA is going to take a closer look at lead in Colorado's water. The areas most impacted are probably the places you'd expect. The war on pickleball could be heading to court. No, not that court. This one. A tradition between two lifelong friends celebrates 60 years.
Never dreamt that 60 years later we'd still be finding an envelope and putting it in an envelope.
That's right.
A story of friendship. Next. Progressives vote late. And while Lisa Calderon was riding a late surge in support, it wasn't enough to get a progressive candidate in the runoff for Denver's mayor. Calderon's effort to upset two of the candidates with the most money has fallen short, and she's conceded the race. Here's where things stand right now. Mike Johnston remains in first with about 42,000 votes. Kelly Brough trails him in second place at 34,000. Calderon trails her by about 3,200 votes. Clerk's office says it has 2,400 votes still to count. Those are ballots that need to be cured by a voter. For example, if they forgot to sign their ballot, they have until next Thursday to fix it and have their votes still counted. Calderon was the underdog candidate. Johnston and Brough far outpaced her in fundraising. With Brough and Johnston now in the runoff, Brough is already trying to claim that she's the underdog because Johnston is well funded and has run for office multiple times. Now we have two candidates with similar ideologies. Johnston and Brough both want more officers. They would enforce the camping ban. Brough said that she would forcibly arrest people violating that ban. Johnston would not, and they're both against rent control. So Denver will have a centrist for mayor. What shape city council takes is still undecided, but it will likely lean further left than the current council, with progressives trying to get some more seats. Candy C. DeBaca, the only Democratic socialist on the council, will head to a runoff. Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez and Sarah Parody currently have the top two spots for the at-large council seats. They're both backed by progressive groups. Undervote was a popular choice in Tuesday's election. An undervote is when a race is left blank or the voter did not choose enough candidates. In the race for at-large city council member, voters could choose two candidates because there are two at-large seats. But a good chunk of voters didn't follow those directions and undervoted. We bring that up because there's a renewed push now for ranked choice voting. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger wonders if voters did not follow the vote for two direction, how difficult would ranked choice voting be?
What is your cookie of choice? And if you can't get that one, what would you pick second? That's the idea behind ranked choice voting.
If you're just ranking who you love, who you like, who you can live with, it's easier.
Linda Templin is the executive director of Ranked Choice Voting for Colorado, which is using this week's Denver election to promote ranked choice voting, because a June 6th runoff is required for mayor and 4 council races, since the top candidate did not get more than 50%.
You know the election results without having to have a second election.
An example of ranked choice voting looks like this, where you would bubble in a choice for who you like first, all the way to your 6th favorite choice. The candidate with the least support gets eliminated, and the people who voted for that last place candidate get their second choice votes counted. That goes on until somebody gets more than 50%.
Rank the candidates in order of preference. You can rank as many or as few as you want.
Compare those instructions to the actual ballot for city council at large this year, where voters were told vote for 2. Many did not follow the instructions. There were almost 93,000 undervotes, meaning almost 93,000 bubbles that could have been filled in were left blank. If there were that many undervotes for vote for 2, isn't ranked choice voting that much more difficult?
Ranking your choices is easier than vote for 2. There's less mental gymnastics involved.
Denver City Councilman Kevin Flynn has pushed back against ranked choice voting, saying other cities have examples where the ultimate winner still doesn't get 50% or more. And if voters only pick 2 or 3 choices and it takes 5 or 6 to decide the winner, that voter may have not helped decide the race. He told me, quote, "I'm not looking for the cheapest way to elect a mayor. I'm looking for the best way." And it would not speed up counting results, because the more that gets printed on a ballot, the more time it takes to run each piece of paper through the computers. While Denver election workers continued to process ballots yesterday, I asked Denver's election director how long it would take to count ranked choice voting ballots.
Like any other election, it would depend on ballot length. and number of cards.
For Next, I'm Marshall Zellinger.
Switching to a ranked choice voting system would require a vote of the people. City Council could refer a measure to the ballot if it wanted, which depends on the makeup of the new City Council, or citizens could collect enough signatures to try to get it on the ballot. Well, lawmakers are in the middle of a marathon debating what to do with growth and construction in Colorado. They're considering a bill that would give the state more power to decide what housing goes where. About 300 people signed up to weigh in on the land use bill in the Senate committee. Almost 8 hours later, people are still testifying there. If that bill is passed, the state's largest cities could not limit construction of houses like duplexes, and it would allow more housing to be built near transportation. Supporters say it would add more housing, hopefully help with affordability. Critics of the bill worry it would trounce existing local laws and zoning. The committee heard from several local leaders, both conservative and liberal mayors and city council members. Some are for it, some are against the measure. Those opposed worry more density could make things like transportation and parking harder. Democratic House leaders want an investigation into what happened when state troopers removed a student from the House gallery on Tuesday. Students walked out of the class to protest gun violence. Some went out to the state capitol, and one of the students sitting in the gallery started shouting about gun violence. Then state troopers got involved.
It's our side!
That's video showing troopers picking up a student to remove him. State Patrol shared their view of what happened with body camera video. Their video shows they were trying to remove one student when another student refused to move. They picked him up. Troopers say the students were being disruptive. The student said the troopers ripped his clothes. CSP said they did not arrest the students, but they did escort them out of the Capitol. Democratic House Speaker Julie McCluskey is calling for an investigation into this. She said the response from troopers was disproportionate to the students' actions. Well, have they gotten to you yet? The folks with the Denver water, are they outside fixing up your house and the water lines? The EPA is giving us a closer look at just how many water pipes in Colorado are considered lead service lines. Lead's been known to contaminate drinking water. Our Luis De Leon takes a closer look at what communities in our state are most impacted and the efforts to try to change that.
For the last 3 years, Denver Water has had crews digging these huge holes to replace lead water pipes.
We're also performing a street cut, digging up the asphalt or concrete in the street.
Alexis Woodrow is Denver Water's lead reduction program manager. She says back in 2020, they estimated that there was somewhere between 64 and 84,000 lead service lines in the Denver region. Since then, they've been working to replace those lines by 2035.
You're doing construction work in the street, you're putting in a connection to the home, but you also have to find them.
And that's just for Denver. Statewide, the EPA gave an update on their estimates for how many lead service lines there are in the state. Their annual survey found that there are 111,000 lead service lines in Colorado.
We also want to look at where replacement of that service line has the greatest impact.
And to figure that out on a wider scale, there are teams of researchers right now looking at which areas and groups of people are most impacted by lead water pipes.
No amount of lead in your blood is safe, right?
Like Dr. Julia Roncoroni, who leads a health disparities research team at DU as part of the Color of Water in Colorado project, starting with a review of public data.
When we looked at that, we also found that several areas of Colorado are more impacted by lead in the water. And those are areas that are primarily inhabited by communities of color and low-income communities.
She uses Commerce City as an example, citing the way the city grew in the mid-90s.
You had buildings of large residential housing complexes and related infrastructure, but the Latinx and lower SES community members stayed in the older, higher density housing stocks in areas that are highly industrialized, right, and where the water is really polluted.
While the research is still being completed, she hopes the data drives intervention.
Before we can think of intervention in that way, we have to start thinking of capturing the issue more broadly.
Here in Denver, Woodrow with Denver Water, you heard from there, tells me that they've replaced over 15,000 lead service lines in the last 3 years. That's actually ahead of schedule at this time. Steve, I also caught up with the state health department on this today. They said they're likely going to see water lead pipes in a lot of the parts of our state that are much older, since, of course, 1986 was when Congress did away with using piping that had lead in them in the first place.
We focus so much on testing now. Replacement is completely different.
Right, and so there's actually going to be a law going into effect here by the end of May. All schools and public schools and daycare centers have to have their water tested for lead. It's interesting to see the two-pronged approach here with infrastructure, and then we see the testing as well.
All right, Luis De Leon reporting. Thank you.
Pickleball's in a bit of a pickle with courts getting closed. Now the players are pushing back. Their friendship dates back decades.
A lot of years in that handwriting.
There sure is.
Even their birthday tradition is celebrating a milestone. And the most Colorado thing we saw today is purple and black, but not very good. Next.
RTD is dropping a controversial part of its new code of conduct that would have banned people from riding buses and trains all day. Homeless advocates had criticized earlier drafts of that policy that RTD is rebranding now as Respect the Ride. They said banning people from lying on the floor or on a bench at a station criminalizes homelessness. The old version would have banned people from staying on the system for continuous trips unless they paid for them. RTD dropped that after hearing some feedback from the public.
It's important to note that the emphasis is on fare-paying customers. We want to make sure that if a customer has paid their fare, that they are able to use the transit system fully. We want to make sure that this transit experience, RTD, is inviting and that it supports all customers, no matter their background.
Notice when they say customers, they just mean people who paid for service. RTD also dropped the part that would have banned unauthorized use of electrical outlets. They say some customers were unplugging TVs that displayed transit schedules. RTD says people can use the outlets that are unused. Speaking of odd conduct on RTD, Terry Campbell spotted this on an H-line light rail train the other day. If you're looking at it from a distance, that is a fine-looking Schwinn. When you look a little closer, you'll realize Schwinn is spelled wrong, written in marker, and that's one of those shareable Lime bikes, just spray painted. Even says Lime bike right there on the seat. Does anybody know the story behind this? We're curious. Email us next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext.
I like the gold, but they need a better spray paint job. Hey, we had plenty of blue skies out there today. What a kickoff to the Rockies season. Beautiful blue skies out there. Temperatures still slightly below our average, but we managed to make our way into the 50s around the metro area, 60s in Lamar, 30s, 40s up into the high country, and really tough to find any clouds out there on HD Doppler 9. High pressure is around. That's going to keep us warm and dry as we head into the Easter weekend. Unfortunately, tomorrow the winds will be kicking up just a bit across the eastern plains, so we have that red flag warning in place. Plenty of sunshine, and that means our temperatures are back into the 60s, mid-60s across the metro with 70s into southeastern Colorado, 40s and low 50s up in the mountains. 70 on deck on Easter Sunday with low 80s possible next week.
All right, thank you, Danielle. It's another development in the war on pickleball. A man in Centennial is considering suing that city over a moratorium the council just passed banning the construction of new courts. John Aguilar with the Denver Post was first to report this. Christopher Evans is the president of the HOA for the Homestead in the Willows subdivision near Holly and Dry Creek. Evans told me today that the neighborhood already had a contractor lined up to line one of the neighborhood's current tennis courts for 2 pickleball courts. Then last month, Centennial passed a 6-month moratorium on building new courts within 500 feet of houses. Evans is an attorney. He argues the moratorium violates the city charter because it only allows the city to address immediate health and safety concerns, not potential concerns. Centennial's moratorium was passed so the city could study the noise impact of pickleball and figure out a way to maybe mitigate it. The city says its moratorium is not illegal. The city says there's a risk pickleball noise can impact the quiet, and that noise is a health and safety concern. They told us what's happening in Denver might be a justification for this. The battle in Centennial just one chapter in the local pickleball wars. Here in Denver, photojournalist Tom Cole caught city contractors putting up fences around the former City Park pickleball court. The city was already doing some asbestos abatement there, then decided to close the court permanently after complaints from neighbors about all the noise and the crowds of people playing there. They found the court violated the city's noise ordinance. So Denver is looking at a couple of different parks for pickleball-only complexes, but they say it could take 2 to 3 years to secure the funding and to build.
They were 13 when they started a birthday tradition.
We know at least once a year we're going to get a letter from the other person.
That's right. Yep.
60 years later, their birthday card has traveled countless miles. Next.
Two women have been friends for decades. They grew up together. Now they're separated by several states, but they keep a birthday tradition going 60 years after it started.
Well, I'm sure our friendship is never going to change. Bonnie and I are connected, and we're always going to be connected. Well, hello there. How are you this morning?
Happy birthday.
Hey, guess what came in the mail? My card. Been a long time we've been sending this back and forth.
Is that 13?
Yeah, 1963.
63.
You would have just turned 13, and it was my 13th birthday.
We've gotten our money's worth out of that card. I think I bought that at Carlisle's for 25 cents.
We know at least once a year we're going to get a letter from the other person.
That's right.
Well, inside it says, when my day comes, erase the name and sign your name instead, and we'll send this greeting back and forth for many years ahead. And it was important to us that we each signed each year. It went back and forth and back and forth. A lot of years in that handwriting.
There sure is.
We filled up the back. We filled up the inside.
Yep. Never dreamt it would last this long. I mean, you don't think about that when you're a kid.
Never dreamt that 60 years later we'd still be finding an envelope and putting it in an envelope.
That's right.
I really hope when the yearly exchange stops that it won't just go in a trash can somewhere, because there's too many years of memories tied to this 25-cent birthday card.
It's a birthday card, but it's really a forever card. It's a forever card.
All right. Talk to you later, my friend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Barbara's birthday's tomorrow. They say they plan to keep sending that card for years to come. If that doesn't make you smile, I don't know what will. We'll be back with your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a stadium full of fans ready to watch bad baseball. It's Rockies opening day at Coors Field, in case you haven't heard. There's no scientific study on this, but we're pretty sure at least half of the fans were actually there to watch baseball today. The rest probably don't care. That fact that owner Dick Montfort is predicting them to finish 500 doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. He likely doesn't care either, as long as the party deck is full, the checks keep cashing, I should say. Boy. But baseball is back, fans are happy, and today they won. If you've got something Colorado to share, email us at next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext. Rob wrote in to say, hey, nice blazer tonight. I figured it was purple, but it's also kind of an Avs blazer. Important game for them tonight in San Jose. We'll see you next time.